Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining another one of our chats. Today we're chatting to Ryan Johnston, who's a guide at Ulusaba. Ryan's been guiding for many years, and he's been through a lot of the famous lion coalitions. So today we're going to get him on. We're going to chat about what he does, chat about the lion coalitions that he's experienced, a few of the leopards. Okay, just let's see if Ryan's on. All right, cool. So I'm just looking at it, right? Hope everybody's doing well, enjoying the time, whatever they're doing. Hey, Ryan, how's it, mate?
Hey, good on you.
Good, man. How's things going your side?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. I think a little bit warmer than when you guys are.
Oh, no, it's chilly, eh? But at least it's a bit better than last week. I mean, last week was, I think, our second coldest day in 9 years down in Joburg, eh? So
Wow,
it's
that's crazy.
really cold, yeah. And
Yeah,
how's
I'm
things
glad I'm
going?
listening.
100%. Um, how's the lockdown going there by you guys?
Yeah, it's been okay. Obviously a little bit different. Different not having guests at the lodges and things like that. But we've been kept busy. The animals are keeping us busy. Elephants keeping us busy with water pipes and things like that. But yeah, it's been good. Not too bad.
Awesome. All right, Ryan. So before you joined, I introduced the guests that you've been around for many years in the Sabi sense. You've
Okay.
experienced quite a lot of crazy stuff. Most of the famous lion coalitions, all the famous leopards.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us a bit about yourself for those that don't know who you are.
Okay, so I started in the Sabi Sands in 2006. I studied prior to that, but started at Simambili as a student guide. And I worked there for a couple of months, and then I was fortunate to get the opportunity to move over to Arathusa Safari Lodge, where I was for a good 6 years, and then moved across to Ulusaba in 2013. I've been here ever since.
So what got you into guiding, mate?
Always wanted to. Hey, I grew up as a kid, always wanting to be out in the bush. Was always fascinated by animals and birds, lots. But all the fauna and flora. Hey, it was definitely living the dream, as they say. But yeah, something I always wanted to do.
Awesome. Before we go any further, man, tell us about your Instagram handle, Ryan Johnson Madness. I mean, what's the like someone
um,
type
yeah,
someone
so.
madness.
That's it's a nickname I was given by a very good friend of mine that I guided with, Jason Bagg. Um, it was odd in the way that the two of us always had a knack of being in the right place at the right time, and that's where I acquired the nickname Madness from him.
Oh, okay, awesome. All right, so at the moment you're based at Ulusaba, right? How many
That's
camps
it.
do you guys run there?
So at Ulusaba, we've got three camps.
Okay.
We've got Safari Lodge, which is down on a dry riverbed on the Brak River. Then we have Rock Lodge and Cliff Lodge, which are both situated up on a rocky outcrop overlooking the reserve.
Wonderful. And what's the capacity of each lodge, right?
At Safari Lodge, we take up to 20 guests, no under 12s. And then up at Rock Lodge, we can take 18 guests, Cliff Lodge 6, and then all eight are on the rock.
Okay, fantastic. And so currently with lockdown, you guys are busy doing the sofa safari, am I right?
That's correct. We are doing sofa safaris.
Awesome. And how many vehicles do you have out doing the sofa safaris?
So we use two vehicles. We've got two teams. We rotate between us, so there's a chance for our guests to see some of the faces they know. And we'll have a ranger, tracker, and a guy on the camera, and then we bounce between each other. Whoever's got sighting or animals that are doing something, and we've been quite lucky. It's worked out quite nicely. We've had some great sightings.
Okay, and how are you finding the the sightings currently compared to normal where there's more vehicles out there? Stuff.
I think it's obviously a lot easier with more vehicles to find the animals, just because you could respond. But one thing that we enjoy, even when we do have that, is tracking. and we're getting to do that quite nicely now. If we find fresh tracks for lions or leopards, off we go on foot, and we can track for track now, not having to worry about time or anything like that. We're really enjoying it.
Awesome. How do you think the animals will be after lockdown when there's more vehicles? I've spoken to a couple of friends. One of my buddies is in Pilansburg, and he said that the leopard sightings were extremely rare. I mean, I think in the past 2 weeks, he's only seen 2 leopards, one today and I think one over the weekend. He says he's seen tracks of them, but he just can't seem to find them. I think they've probably gone a bit more skittish. So, how do you think that you guys it would be?
I think they could potentially be a little bit more wary at times. We have noticed it with one of the two of the lions that have been a little bit more cautious of the vehicle, where usually they pay no attention to us, but nothing drastic. If anything, I think it would be in reserves where they can't off-road like Pilansburg and so on, where the interaction with the cats is more at a distance, maybe becoming more secretive again. But it should pick up again. I'm sure once they get used to the vehicles out and that again, it will be all right.
What's the best sighting you've had so far during the sofa safaris or during your guys' own experience?
So we were quite fortunate. It was my team and I was on the camera, which was good fun because it was a bit of a rodeo. But we were sitting with a group of giraffe, and then all of a sudden a big male leopard, day one, an old male, rocked up. So we had all the giraffes standing staring at him. He moved away, bumped into a herd of impala, started stalking there, and then we had dogs run through the sighting as well. So not too bad.
That's pretty crazy, man. All right,
Yeah.
so let's get into the Lions. You obviously entered the Sabi Sands in 2006, you said. When you came in, I think that's when the Mapogo coalition started coming together. Maybe you can give us some insight into the Mapogos, how many there were, what were their antics. I watched Brothers in Blood a few times, actually. I had it on my list to watch it yesterday, but I just couldn't get down to it again. But yeah, I watched it a few times, and every time you watch it, it's like just captures you in awe. And you are there, you experienced parts of it as well. You can just fill us in and give us a briefing into how the whole Mapogo thing and everything operated.
Oh, for sure. It still gives me goosebumps thinking about some of the things we had in store with them. But I was fortunate. I was one of the few guys in the northern Sabi stands that saw them first. It was in late December 2006, one of the first times they had ventured into our sector. And we caught them late at night crossing back away from us. And then we didn't see them again for about 8 months. We heard them, but we never saw them. And then they started pushing. And that's when we saw all 6 of them. And that's when they came in and destroyed prides in the north. They took a lot of the Styx pride out. They bumped into prides up in the north in the Buffels Hook territory, which they chased up into the Majingilane, killed their males. So we watched that whole takeover. And then we watched the split. As you guys would know, Mr. T and Kinky Tail, who's on the screen there, split from the others. And then those were the 2 that I got to watch more intensely. And it was interesting to see how the 2 would bounce together and stay together. How one would be big and strong and then the other one would be big and strong, because everybody always said Mr. T was always dominant, but it wasn't always the case. Sometimes Kinky Tail was bigger and stronger than him if he was in a better condition. But the way they worked together was insane. And then I was there the morning where they killed one of the Majingilans.
That was the first film from the 6 of them, right? Or from the 5?
That's correct. So there were 5 Majingilans. We'd been seeing them pushing in from the Majingilane. They came in from the northwest, or the northeast rather. And we watched as Mr. T and Kinky Tail chased them many times, even chased them off kills, buffalo kills. And then this morning they happened to catch the one by himself. And that was probably the craziest sighting I had as well. Just with regards to the sounds and even the smells. I mean, we heard his bones breaking when they were breaking his legs. I always say it's strange to hear, but I know what a lion sounds like in pain, screaming in pain, which was quite intense. So that all happened, and then obviously the 4 Majingilans came back and grabbed Kinky Tail that night and killed him. And then that was the beginning of the downward spiral for the Mapogos. Mr. T, who you can see there, then went back and joined his 4 brothers. in the western sector, and in doing that caused chaos. Yeah, because he came back here and then decided to kill all of his brother's cubs, and that's that was a downward spiral. And then 2 of the boys disappeared. 2 more of the 6 disappeared. We believe Majingilane.
Any reason for disappearance? There's some.
Yeah, we believe they had. There were rumors that they had interaction with Majingilane as well. There were audios caught on certain video cameras outside of lodges where you could definitely hear lions fighting, but to confirm who it was is very difficult. We did find a skull of a big male lion. All the Majingilanes were accounted for at the time, and one of the Mapogos went missing, so I presume it was him. So yeah, that was 3 of them down then. And then Mr. T was stuck with old Makulu, who was the old boy, the largest one, and old Skew Spine, who if you saw pictures of him, you can see a nice break in it, what looked like a heel break in his back. And then the Selati males came. So another coalition then joined, and they then destroyed Mr. T, as you see in the documentary.
Okay. So the Mapogos, when they were in the Sabi sands, the lion population was like almost decimated. They were just killing lions left, right, and center, and there weren't much prides left. Is that true, or is it a bit exaggerated?
No, that's definitely true. Definitely true. There were large prides of lions. I remember we saw a pride in the north that went from 26 to 11 in one night. The 6 of them managing to grab lionesses, cubs, one of the dominant males at the time. They continuously grabbed 6 cubs. They would fight here with the Ottawa pride, killing Ottawa lionesses. The 2 of them would often go into Kruger. They did venture into Kruger at times, coming back covered in scars and fresh wounds. So I'm presuming fights from there as well. But yeah, they definitely killed a lot of lions, and we unfortunately witnessed it as well.
And with lion behavior, that's pretty normal. But these guys took it to the next level. Any specific reason you think was for that? Or?
For sure, they definitely took it up a notch. It could have potentially been because of the fight between them as well, especially with Mr. T and Makulu. Part of the split, there was always an argy-bargy between the 2 of them. We had Mr. T injured on our airstrip for 2 weeks where he couldn't move because he'd been in a fight with Makulu. Bit him badly through the leg. He struggled to walk. And potentially that's why he went back. Potentially why he killed the cubs. But yeah, it was a dominance thing. I think they were just showing what they were made of, and anything that got in the way or opposed them was taken out.
And did you witness them killing any other lions apart from when they killed the Majingilane?
So the Majingilane, I was there unfortunately when a couple of cubs were killed. I got there when they'd already killed lionesses and other males, and then seen animals that were injured by them, not necessarily killed, but injured badly enough that they died later on.
So what goes through your mind, or what's the experience like? To see lions killing lions. I know people say they always want to experience something like that, but myself personally, I say I want to, but I don't know if I'll be able to just absorb all that sounds and all that commotion and all the emotions that's going through. What was your experiences like with that happening?
For sure. People often come on safari and say they'd like to see a kill, and I don't think people realize that something's actually dying. It doesn't want to die. So it's not the prettiest scene at all. And then just the thought of lion killing lion is something, it's something different until you see it. They're brutal. They're extremely harsh with one another.
Sure. All right, let's take some questions on the Mapogos, right? I see some people ask some questions. Just let me scroll back up here. There are quite a few. Okay. If there's anything you want to add, Solom, but feel free. Go for it. We're enjoying it. With myself personally, I'm loving the. I just find the whole lion prides and lion coalitions just amazing and awesome, and to follow them and to know their offspring and to know which brides they're taking over and all that. I mean, it's just fascinating, eh? How they
Yeah,
go
for sure.
about things here.
To be completely fair and honest, it's almost like watching gangs. It's like gang warfare, watching guys in prison and all sorts. They help each other at times, and then they're not scared to stab each other in the back at times as well. It's crazy, and they all have their own personalities as well, which is something that being able to have been here and witnessed them all so long is you learn how they are and see how they are, and it's very cool.
And when they went missing yourself, I mean, you probably became quite attached to them. Did you feel any emotion when you saw them dying, or how was it for you?
Um, for, for sure.
Because I mean, a lot of the viewers, sorry, I'm going to just break down here. A lot of
No
the
problem.
viewers, myself included, and my family included, when we watched that Brothers in Blood, when you see them dying, I mean, definitely it brought a tear or two to our eyes. You guys there experienced it firsthand, got to experience it much more than what a documentary would ever show. Obviously, that's just bits and snippets just added up into one documentary, but you've experienced it for like 6, 7 years. So yeah, I'm sure the emotions and all that is totally different.
Yeah, for sure. With the it's actually quite strange. I think it comes down to how well you know the lion as well. When I watched Mr. T and Kinky Tail destroying the Majingilane, I was game. I was all up for it because they were my boys. I wanted them to win, so I was in their corner, unfortunately. But the same night when that night when Kinky Tail was killed, yes, I definitely shed a tear because he was my homeboy pretty much. So yeah, I remember even breaking the news the next morning to some of the guys on the radio, and the guys were upset, didn't want to believe it, and then a couple of guys said they shed a tear as well. So yeah, we do. We're not supposed to, but we do get attached to some of these animals as we watch them growing.
Yeah, practically they're daily when they're seeing them growing up doing their thing. So there's definitely that attachment there. Ryan, there's a message here from Tiago. He wants to know what happened to Rasta and Dreadlocks, the missing Mapogos. Do you know what happened to them?
Those are the two that we can't confirm. I mean, that was one of them that we believe potentially got killed with that audio that we got from the webcam. And then the other one, we're not sure. Unfortunately, within the reserve, there's quite a large property where there's no vehicles traversing all the time. And so anything could have happened on there, and none of us would have ever known about it.
All right, there's another one here. Where do you think the Mapogos stand in sort of rank to big male lion coalitions of all time?
Ooh. It's difficult with regards to the
what
amount of lions. The amount of lions they killed and the territory they had was phenomenal. But if you look at passing on genes and things like that, they weren't so successful. And that's just because they. If you look at it now, there's very few of their kids left, really. There's no males that came from them. They sired no coalitions. The one pride that we do have, which is from Mr. T and Kinky Tail, which would be considered a success, is the Mangen pride. They're a phenomenal pride, and their daughters are now the Kambula pride, which are also a very, very successful pride. So yes, there they are. But if you look at what the Majingulanes did, for example, the Majingulanes for me would be a more successful coalition just because of how many cubs they sired and how many have survived.
Awesome. There's a question here from Zenith. Has there ever been a coalition like the Mapogos before or after them? Probably she's meaning to their brutality or something like that, I would assume.
Oh, yeah, if it is with regards to their brutality, no. Not that I'm aware of. I think that's why they are so famous, just because of what they did, just because of the amount of lions we saw them killing and the fact that it was documented, yeah.
All right, then someone wants to know how long did Makulu last in Kruger? That's a difficult one. Eh? Did you guys get any news on him? Or he just disappeared? I think he was seen in Mala Mala after it for a short while. And then he just vanished. Am I correct in saying that? Or?
I believe so. I believe he was seen with another younger male for a while. Maybe I've got that wrong. But the last I heard was a couple of months after Mr. T was killed. One of my friends, Grant Beverly, who works with EWT, the Wild Dogs, saw them when they were out on patrol looking for the dogs. And that's the last confirmed I heard of them.
There's a question here that gets asked a lot when animals are in distress or when animals are suffering natural conditions. How hard is it not to intervene and end the suffering?
Yeah, it can sometimes be difficult, but I think now we've got to the point where you have to accept it. It can be difficult seeing a little wildebeest with a broken leg or an impala lamb with a broken leg. But then you've also got to remember, if you take him away and fix him, you're taking somebody else's food away. That could be a female leopard with cubs that needs a kill to supply milk, and so on. So you've got to look at it in that way as well. But it can be very difficult, especially when it's, again, an animal like a lion or a leopard that you've watched since it was a cub, and a simple stint would fix a leg, and you just unfortunately can't do it.
Awesome. Are you still yet to hear a lion roar like Makulu?
Yeah, Makulu had the best roar, without a doubt. And it's simply just because the way he could continue. It was crazy. He just didn't skip a beat. You'd think he's finished and he'd just carry on. It's not supposed to happen like that.
100%. All right, let's move over to the next coalition, bud. You're going to discuss we can do the Majingilane, right? Is that good?
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, so
that's all.
give us a bit more info about them, how they came about.
Okay, so that's the dark mane male. He's a beast. He was a beast of the line.
So get a bit cut off. I tried to sort of crop it so it can fit in there. That's why you'll see some of your pics. Just to note that all these pics are from Ryan that I'm going to be showing up, right? So you'll see some of the pics I've actually swapped them around to the other side. So my face is there, so they can be on the side.
No, that's cool, no problem. So yeah, the Majingilines were a great coalition, I thought. Obviously, in the beginning, we didn't like them much because of what they did to Kinky Tail, and they were also quite nervous of vehicles. We learned quite quickly that it was because of our truckers. They came from an area in Kruger where they obviously weren't accustomed to somebody sitting out of the vehicle. So it took a couple of months to get them used to the vehicles, especially that guy. He used to go lay away from you and watch you over a bush from the distance. And then, yeah, they slowly pushed west after killing Kinky Tail. We watched as they forced Mr. T out completely, and then started taking over the prides. They did kill cubs. They killed Styx Pride cubs that I saw, and then they took over the Tsalala Pride. At the time, that is when the old female, the guys might remember, there was a female called Bibi, which meant Boerbul, and we called her that because she didn't have a tail. And she grabbed the remaining cubs and ran off with them, saving them. Those 4 cubs turned out to be the Mangen females. But at that time, the other 2 Tsalala females hooked up with the Majingilane boys, and for about 2 years we watched as they ran that whole northern section, taking over all those prides, breeding with the lionesses, and successfully having cubs. It was then, not unfortunately, but it was then that I moved to the western sector. So I left them in their heyday over there. So I came across to the west, and that's when I had the Selati males, which I got to know for about a year. And I kept warning, saying it's coming. The Majingilines are going to come knocking one day, and that day happened. They came to the west, so they took over even more territory. And then we got to watch them here as well. So it was really cool. I got to watch them from where they took over dominance right through to eventually where they started getting old, started picking up injuries from hunts. We watched as they slowly passed away, more through natural causes. None of them were killed by other lions or anything like that.
Awesome. So when did the lion population sort of recover, like with more lions coming into the equation?
So I think I wouldn't say we've recovered completely, to be honest, to what it was. I mean, if you look prior Majingilane, we had a huge population of lions. And I don't think we've got back to that number yet. The Ottawa Pride is still nowhere near that size. Yes, we do have the new Mangens and their youngsters and so on, and the Kambula Prides, but they're prides that disappeared completely with the Mapogo. And I think it would take a while still, maybe a few more generations or one or two more big, strong coalitions, and we might get back up there eventually.
Awesome. All right. Sorry, who's this one? This is a Matimba, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is a Matimba.
But before we go there, let's go to the Selatis. Maybe you can give us some more information on them. Sorry, there was another question here. Who was your favorite from the Mapogos?
From the Mapogos. Oh, it's definitely a toss-up between Mr. T and Kinky Tail, but I think Kinky Tail might edge it there. I did enjoy Kinky Tail.
And from the Majingilanes?
Or Majingilane. Probably the dark male. Just because of his, he scared the hell out of me in the beginning because of those eyes, but I think towards the end I really got to enjoy him.
Awesome. And what was your craziest sighting with the Majingilanes?
So the craziest sighting I had with the Majingilane was probably, which it involved the Matimba males. It was when the Matimba males first started showing up. So they too came from Manjaleti, from the northern part. And I was fortunate that I was in a sighting where I watched the two coalitions set up a boundary. And so I had 4 of the Majingilanes and 5 of the 6 Matimbas, because originally the Matimbas were a coalition of 6. So I had 5 of the Matimbas and 4 of the Majingilanes, and I watched as the two coalitions chased each other up and down for about 2 hours, and just vocalizing all the time. They'd run from one open area to the other, lay maybe 20, 30 meters apart and just blast at each other. So I still reckon in that sighting, I was in the sighting for about an hour. I must have had between 150 and 170 roars around my vehicle.
That's insane.
Yeah, I'll never forget them. I'll never forget I had a little 6-year-old with me. She was loving it. She just had her fingers in her ears the whole time, but smile all the time. It was great. It was a very cool sighting.
Fantastic, man. Someone's asking you what made the Majingilane so unique. Some say that they were never caught off guard. Was it perhaps of their togetherness? Or?
Tell you what, they were a very clever coalition. So talking about the Selatis, when I moved to the western sector, were 4 males, but they too started as 5. Okay. They were 5 young males. And the 5th male was killed by the Majingilanes in Londolozi. And okay. I'll never forget, 2 of the Majingilanes were in Londolozi, and 2 of them were up in the north with us. And these 5 males managed to catch 2 of the Majingilanes. Not catch them physically, but catch them and get close to them. And these the 2 that were with them were clever. They ran north and they called. And the 2 brothers that were with us didn't answer, but got up and ran straight to their brother's aid. They never made a sound. It was amazing. We were with them. We heard the roaring. And they stood up, listened, and just ran. And fortunate for the 2 that were being chased by the 5, the 2 brothers came to their aid, and they grabbed one of those 5 young males and they killed him and they ate most of them.
That's insane, eh? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to play one of the videos that you sent me with the lions roaring, right? We'll just go quiet for a bit because obviously the audio will come up. If I can find it here. Okay, so the audio will come up. Then after the audio, then you can give us more information about this, right?
Cool.
This was crazy, but can you fill us in about this?
So that is the 4 Majingilanes, all 4 of them, together with 3 of the adult Mangen females, and then 14 of their sub-adults. So there were 21 lions there. And one of the Mangen females was separated. She must have gone off hunting during the day or something like that, and she lost the pride. So she was calling, and they were all answering her. And it was insane. To have 21 lions roaring around you is something, it really is phenomenal.
Awesome, awesome. All right, the Selatis, what happened to them? How was their coalition like? Which parts of the sands did they take over? And how was their rule? Were they
So,
quite successful?
so the Selatis took over the western sector. Compared to the other coalitions, they didn't have as large a territory. And there was always, it didn't feel right with them. There was almost like a clique within the coalition. And the one male, the male that picture of, always seemed to be on his own. The more dominant of the three other males was injured quite soon after I started him. He was injured by a buffalo, and it took about 8 months, and then he passed away, leaving only the three males. And then the other two, again, would leave this guy on his own for a lot of the time. And he was actually the first one that was caught by the Majingilans. And they didn't kill him, which was odd. He did manage to get away and join the other two. But one of the other two thought he was smart and would go see what's up with these new boys. And the Majingilans then grabbed him and killed him. And so left only two of the Selati, and they ran. It was the smart thing to do. And they ran all the way to the Majingilane, where I believe for a short period the two of them took over a pride and actually carried on for a little while.
So they were still in good nick and they got chased off then.
Yeah, they were still they were younger than the Majingilans. They are younger than the Majingilans. So yeah, it was yeah, and that shows you again how clever the Majingilans were.
Exactly, yeah, fantastic. Eh? Very intelligent lions, eh, from what I've gathered from you now. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna play another video, right? Who's that? Who's that lion there, lion?
That looks like one of the Majingilans.
Okay. That roar was just fantastic when I heard it. I mean, just
Great.
amazing as well. Eh?
And got his girlfriend for backup there as well.
I see. All right. Let's go over to the Matimbas, right? So after the Salatis, am I right in saying that the Matimbas came in? Or after?
After the Majingilans, yes. Correct, yeah. So as the Majingilans pushed further west, when they came and joined me here, the two Matimba males had split away from the rest of their coalition. They'd come south and taken over in Londolozi and Mala Mala. And the Birmingham males then managed to wedge themselves between the two and the four that were still up in the Majingilane. But these two then stayed on Londos and that for quite some time. And while the Majingilans were getting old and started passing away, the Birmingham males, which were then three, pushed the Matimbas our way. And so we got the two older males,
Okay.
of which only one now is left. Old Hairy Belly, that's the guy's name.
I'm going to show a video
Still
of the ones you sent me.
This is him.
So that's
Nice
it.
shame.
When last you?
We saw him about 10 days ago. I know some of the other guys did see him yesterday morning though. So he was with the Ottawa Pride yesterday morning, and from what I could hear, he was doing okay.
Okay, what's his age now, Ryan, more or less?
Well, if we work it out correctly, he should be about 13 now, just over or close to. He is old. He's lived a lot longer than what we used to, male lions living out here. And but he's living the life. He's having a good time with the Ottawa girls at the moment. So
awesome. All right, so
ride it while you can.
Sorry, which lions are currently ruling there by you guys in the West?
So we see the Ottawa Pride and the Matimba male. He stays with them. So that's 3 adult lionesses. They've then got 3 sub-adult males. The oldest one is about 2.5 now. And then the other 2 males and their sister are almost 2. So they're a pride when the Matimba's around, they're a pride of 8. And then we see the Mangen Pride still. And they come across with the Ottawa male. At the moment, they're the Ottawa male plus 3 adult lionesses or four rather, and then two sub-adultish lionesses that are almost at the point of breeding, and then a younger lioness. So also a fairly good pride. Lots of girls, which is great. And then every now and then we're seeing the sticks pride. And I believe that's because at the moment, with pressure from different coalitions, especially with their sub-adult cubs, they're moving around. They're being more nomadic and wandering right through the reserve. We're seeing them all, and they're popping up all over the show. So there's always the chance of seeing them. And then every now and then, the last remaining Shimungwe female makes a little appearance. But we can't rely on her. She just pops up every now and then.
All right, fantastic, man. Okay, I think that's it with lions. If anybody has any other questions about lions, please feel free to ask. Oh, wait, sorry, there was another question I needed to ask you. I'm going to put up one of these pictures here for you. You can give us some info into what happened at the sighting.
That also was a phenomenal sighting. So that's actually one of the Mangen females when she was still young. So she would have been there with her three other sisters, and then that tailless lioness we spoke about earlier. That was that group that had moved away to avoid the Majingilanes. So that's one of the Mapogo's daughters. And what had happened is just after we got out, we found the five of them killing a big male waterbuck.
Okay.
They were still in the process of killing him. Obviously, a great sighting to start the morning. And there were two hyenas on the scene. Probably not those two, but there were two on the scene. And they started vocalizing. And it was crazy. Within 15 minutes, we had over 20 hyenas pull into it. And then obviously putting a lot of pressure on the lions with their calls and things like that. And they managed to force the lionesses off the kill, but then it turned into more of a predator war. The kill was almost forgotten. Lions were grabbing hyenas were grabbing lions. I remember a lioness going straight over a large bush to get away. I remember hyenas grabbing a lioness and other lionesses climbing in to pull them off. So it was hell crazy. And then to add into that, a young male out of nowhere, male lion who must have been attracted by the commotion, came running in and stole the kill from all of them.
Typical of the male lions, eh?
Exactly.
All right, fantastic. There's a question here from Michael. Ryan, what do you think of the Matimbas accepting the then young cubs of the Ottawa Pride when they took over?
It was very interesting. Hey? We all honestly thought that they were going to kill the cubs. The problem was, because they were so old, the lionesses could always be one step ahead. And the lionesses weren't scared to be aggressive towards the Matimbas. If one lioness stood her ground and got aggressive towards them, they'd rather back up, which gave the cubs a chance to back off. But they needed the girls because they weren't in great condition and they needed food. And I think they kind of made a trade-off. It was either be good to these kids, adopt them, and get food from the girls, or keep chasing them and we're not going to get anything. And so that's pretty much what it comes down to. I think they chose food over that. I think it also helped that the young Ottawa lioness came into estrus, her first estrus at that time. And so the boys covered her, and I presume we were happy with that.
Awesome. All right, fantastic. But let's move on to leopards, right? Boom. Okay, that guy. Tell us a bit about him. I'm sure you have a lot of experiences.
That is a nasty old leopard. Yeah, he was. Oh man, old Jordan male used to give us many a grey hair because he'd come onto our property and we'd think it was our dominant male, Mapofunyan, and we'd track him only to find him running away from you or leading you on a false trail. He was a bugger, that leopard.
All right, awesome. Who's Karula's father? Is it him? Sorry, who's Tandi's father? Tandi's father. Let's just do a little bit that, right?
So Tandi's father would have been your dad. Yes, Tandi's father is your dad. Your dad and Karula, correct? Yes. And this is Karula's dad, Mapofunyan, or Tandi's grandpa as well. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because there's a lot of I mean, some people say it's Mapofunyan, and some people say it's Jordan. But
Yeah, well, there's old Tandy, yeah.
yeah, sorry,
So,
that's
so
not.
as far as the thing is, when I arrived, Tandy was born in February of 2007. So the mating happened before I arrived, and I suppose there's nobody really that can confirm it. Um, from what I've understood from scat samples, from guys that do research and things like that, from the gene pool and stuff, Tandy is your dance.
All right, fantastic, man. Thanks for clearing that one up for me, man. It was always in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
Eh? Tell us about this old lady, bud.
Oh, Safari! What a yeah, she was actually one of the first leopards I ever saw in the Sabi sands.
Oh,
So she'll always one of the first leopards I saw, and she was actually the first kill I ever saw. She smashed a female impala next to me, so she'll always have a special place in my heart. And then that eye was something very different. I think something not many people expected to see when you said, "Here comes a leopard walking down the road." And then you had that eye
what
looking
happened
at
to
you.
her?
Um, from what vets and so on have said, is it's from a blow to the face.
Okay.
It's from a hit potentially when she was mating or fighting with another leopard. She must have taken a knock to the face and it caused that. There are other leopards, as you know, that have had it as well. The old Sand River male had it after a fight. And I believe Hukumuri
Kumuri.
is also he's also got an eye, and that's probably from a smack from Anderson. So um, it
And
does
then,
happen.
and then there's it one female from your side. I think her name is Insele, if I'm not mistaken, right? She's also
Correct.
yeah.
That is correct. So Nsele has lost the eye though. There's no eye in at all. So at least Safari, the eye was still there. With Nsele, it's completely gone. And Nsele is also from the western, originally from the northern sector. Her mother was Salayeshe, which is the female that used to live around Elephant Plains and so on. Her father would have been the Tyson or the
Okay.
Martley male, as a lot of people knew. Yes.
All right,
That's
fantastic.
Salayeshe.
Yeah, that's Salayesh. Yeah. All right. I had a picture up of Karula, and then we were talking of Salayesh. I think she's one of the most famous leopards now with Safari Live and all that. So people
No, for sure.
they fell in love
A
with her.
lot of a big time. A lot of love for Karula. Hey, yeah, she was a very pretty and a very cool leopard. Hey, probably still by far one of the most successful mothers. The amount of cubs she managed to raise was just incredible. I think it was only her fourth litter where she actually lost one of the cubs. That would have been Shivambalana's sister, Shavinzi. She just kept bringing the cubs out. It was insane. So, and she wasn't shy with them either, as you guys all know from Safari Live. She was always great with the cubs. So she was a really good leopard.
Awesome. I think this leopard's got a special place in your heart.
He does indeed. Mvula. I was fortunate enough to name him on my 21st birthday.
Oh,
The other guy, yeah, the other guides kind of gave that privilege to me as a birthday present. So yeah, I named him Mvula on my 21st birthday, which was very
so
cool.
what's behind the name?
Um, his eyes. If you've seen any, his eyes had that blue-gray color to them. And I remember one of the other guys wanted me to name him after a leadwood tree, Monzo, because of the color of the bark. And it just so happened that for some reason it always rains on my birthday and the clouds were out, and I looked at the clouds and yeah, he got the name Mvula.
Okay, fantastic, man. Um, are you a leopard man or a lion man? Difficult question.
Well,
I know a lot
I
of
must say,
favorites here.
yeah, it's very difficult to answer. I'm a big cat guy. Um, I, the thing with lions is and leopards is you can spend a lot of time with leopards, and leopards are a lot more active than lions. Generally, when you're with leopards, they're busy and they're doing things and so on. And a lot of the time, 90% of the time you spend with lions, they're sleeping. But when lions do something cool, it really, really is cool. So yeah, it is a bit of a difficult one to answer.
Okay. I'm going to put up a couple of videos now, right? You can maybe fill us. into that. Which mating pair is this?
So that's our now dominant male Ravenscourt. And one of his females we call the Boulders female. She's a female that runs pretty much from our lodges southwards. So she is a female we do see around the lodges. And yeah, that's the courtship. That was actually successful. She had a litter of 2 from that, and she's managed to raise both of them, which is quite cool.
Okay, fantastic. This is Ravenscourt as well, right?
Correct, but that was him many, many years ago. So that was when he was only just on 3 years old, which was quite incredible to kill a pig
before
of
you
that
go
size.
much further with Ravenscourt, there's a very interesting story behind it. Maybe you can tell us more and tell the listeners more about his upbringing and how he survived and where he's come from also.
Yeah, he's got quite a story. Hey, so Ravenscourt actually gets his name from his mother. And for those that know, they'll know that Ravenscourt's mother was killed when he was still very young, when he was still dependent on her. He was about 11 months old at the time. I have seen cubs being pushed away from their mothers at that age, but that is very young still. It's usually a couple months after that. And people don't realize with a cat, a couple of months makes a big difference. And so he was with his mom at the time. They were on a kill. I think they had an impala kill. She was sleeping. She had fed and she was resting in the shade. Ravenscourt was up on the kill at the time. He was busy feeding, and then a new male came into the area whose name was Neoleti. And Neoleti is a male that is still around, and Neoleti is actually a male that comes from the north as well. He's relative of Salayeshe. Salayeshe's sister. It's his. Well, I suppose she's his auntie. But yeah, he ran up the tree as young males do, as we've been speaking about with the lions, killing cubs, trying to establish himself as a dominant male. He went straight after the cub. He flew up the tree, having a go at Ravenscourt, and Ravenscourt's mother followed. Luckily, she heard. She went up the tree. She grabbed Neoleti just before he got to Ravenscourt. The 2 of them fell out of the tree, and unfortunately, Neoleti fell on top of her and he killed her. He killed. She broke her back, we believe, in the fall, and then he grabbed her and asphyxiated her.
Yeah.
While this was happening, Ravenscourt ran down the tree and gassed it. Ran straight or deeper into his father's territory. His father is the Shan male. And yeah, we kind of wrote him off. We weren't sure what was going to happen. We thought other leopards would pick him off. We thought Neoleti would get him. We thought maybe his dad would get him. We thought maybe Dawan would get him, who was another dominant male at the time. And he was really just smart about it. He dodged and weaved, and we presume he fed on squirrels and mice and things to start with. And then he progressed. And like I say, there he is as a 3-year-old killing a huge warthog that I'd seen other leopards walk past that they wanted nothing to do with that warthog. He was a big, big warthog. And Ravenscourt took him on and killed him.
I'm sure the audio from the sighting must have been insane with the warthog squealing.
Oh, wow, yeah, no, that really was. It was one of the worst I've had. Shame I had an elderly lady that was on holiday by herself for her birthday, and she asked me for 6 days, please don't see anything die. So I tried my best, and that happened to be the morning of her birthday. So it was a bit heartbreaking, but she understood and she took it on. But the problem was the pig was too big, the warthog was too big for Ravenscourt to asphyxiate, and so he had to kill it in other ways. And yeah, it wasn't pretty. The pig probably screamed for about an hour and a half. We were quite surprised that we were quite surprised that hyenas didn't hear and come and steal it. Only to learn later on that they were busy stealing a kill from a cheetah. So that had pulled the hyenas away. But that warthog did unfortunately take a little while to die.
Incredible, man. I'm going to put up another video here, right? I don't know if the viewers can hear the audio, but it's just crazy.
Yeah, that was, with regards to audio, one of the best leopard sightings.
Can you give us some info what's happening here? But I see three leopards and just a whole bunch of noise.
Yeah, correct. So it was three adult, almost well, one almost a sub-adult male. So who's up there? The one that launched herself up the tree is a female we know as Bastille. She's a female we have around here. She was actually on our sofa safari on Monday.
Oh,
She did us good. She killed a female impala in the morning, took it up the tree, and she brought her cub over for the safari. So it was
amazing.
great. Um, but what had happened is the young male had killed an impala, and his father, who we all thought would chase him away, didn't. He accepted him and so joined him on the kill. And so the two of them were on the kill. And then this female was in estrus. And so she wasn't interested in the kill. She was more interested in the dominant male, the one. But the two boys didn't know that. They thought she wanted the food. And so they weren't too happy when she joined them in the tree. It was quite funny in the way that she actually eventually pushed the younger male out of the tree, showing him who was boss. So it was good fun. It was a great sighting. And as you can hear, the audio is phenomenal. It's almost like a Walt Disney panther. Like it's very cool.
100%. I think the last leopard we'll talk about today is the guy on the screen. He's
Oh,
nearing
yeah.
the end of his tenure. Some saying he's already gone nomadic. But maybe you can give us some insight into when you guys discovered him when you were up north.
Yeah, so that's Tingana. And he came from, we believe, from the west, moving east into the north. He came in a lot initially around Elephant Plains and Stimambili. I remember Liam Rainier doing a lot of work trying to get this leopard relaxed because he wasn't relaxed at all. He wanted nothing to do with the vehicles. He was actually the first leopard I saw on an aardvark kill. He killed quite a large aardvark. Yeah, he killed quite a large aardvark, which guts me because I still haven't seen a live aardvark in the
I
Sabi
was
Sands.
live one, yes.
I've only seen three in the Sabi Sands, and they've all been in trees, unfortunately. So yeah, so Tingana was one of them, and yeah, we got to know him and love him as well. He was a beautiful cat. But it was fun because the Samabili guys and Liam would always back Tingana, but I'd always back Mvula because Mvula was around back then. So I always had my thumbs up for him. And it was fun because we were all in a sighting one day when we saw Mvula give Tingana a proper hiding. So it was fun, yeah.
Okay, fantastic, man. Before you go, what's been the scariest moment that you've experienced while out guiding?
So probably with a vehicle, I'd have to say elephants, just because they're so big and intimidating. I haven't had it in a while, fortunately. A lot of our elephants in the western sector are nice and relaxed, and we've got a herd that sticks around that we know quite well. But one thing of guiding up in the north is being so close to the Kruger boundary, we'd often encounter elephants that wouldn't have seen vehicles for potentially months. And so we had some, females tusking the ground in front of the car, pushing over trees, all sorts. So yeah, elephants would have definitely been the scariest in the vehicle. And then on foot, lions are obviously very intimidating. But I've also had the unfortunate being in the situation where I had two black rhinos coming at me and my guest at the same time. So yeah, that's definitely one I'll never forget. Just on a bushwalk, minding our own business, happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And two black rhinos came running through our sighting. So it was intimidating standing your ground with two of them coming at you.
And how did they turn around and go away? What did you do?
Sure. I was very fortunate. I had 6 guests that put their complete trust in me. I managed to hide them behind a small termite mound with my tracker. I tried to hide as well, but the termite mound was right in the path. And just before they got to us, I decided it was now or never, and I jumped up face them head on. I'd read lots of old Kruger books and things like that, guys that do trails, that rhinos don't like the sound of metal. And so rather than pointing my rifle at them, I used it as an instrument. I used my ring and tapped it against the rifle, giving off a nice sound. I obviously screamed and shouted. And fortunately, they both stopped, looked at me, and then turned and ran.
Awesome, awesome, man. Ryan, I think you're the envy of many a nature lover. For those that want to follow in your footsteps, what advice do you have for them?
Do it. If somebody wants to do this, this is without a doubt one of the most rewarding jobs you can do. Just with regards to the things you get to see and experience. It's really special to be out here all the time. And if you're going to do it, it is a difficult industry to get into at the moment. It's worth studying, especially for the younger guys. I know a lot of younger guys that are in school always ask me, what should we do? And I say to them, go get something good behind you, go get a good education, try get something like zoology or conservation behind you. It really is worth it. And spend time, learn things. It's not an easy job. A lot of people think it's fun to drive around in a Land Rover and just point at animals. It's not just that. It's long hours and hard work, but it's definitely worth it. And it pays off when we see how our guests respond to it. Obviously, our team. It's always cool to do things as a team, and it makes you feel good. It really is. It's a rewarding job if it's what you want to do.
100%. Ryan, I can chat to you for hours, man. I'm totally taken away by leopards and lions. We can sit and we chat, but I think we can do that over coffee at Ulusaba one of the days.
Yeah, it sounds like a plan.
And just before you go, check my second cup that I'm going to drink my water.
Oh, that's great. And we're going to be lifting another one shortly, hopefully.
Yeah, 100% shortly. That's awesome. But it's been awesome chatting. Hopefully we can catch up again and chat again. And we'd like to come there and check out your place. There's so much more questions I've got you to ask, but the chats are limited to an hour. I'm sure the people also loved it. There were a lot of people that said a fantastic, great chat. And Ryan is such a gentleman, the best guy they've been with. And thumbs up to you, bud. You're doing a fantastic thing. Keep it up.
Thanks
keep
very
at
much.
it. And like you say, just carry on doing what you love.
Cool. Thanks very much, and thanks for having me. And then just remind all the guys to watch our Sofa Safari on Monday at 4 o'clock. For the guys that don't know, just to check out the Virgin Limited Edition page, and we're on there. And it's good fun. We'll have a good laugh.
Awesome. Thanks, bud. You have yourself
Thanks,
a good
buddy.
evening.
Have a good one.
We'll catch up with the soccer later on. Yeah.
That's it. I'll chat to you later. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining the chat. It was fantastic. I had a lot of fun. I'm sure you guys too. Recorded version of the chat will be up on our social feeds. And for anybody that missed it, you can send them the link. And we hope to catch you all on Safari soon. Take care. Have a good day. Have a good evening. Goodbye.